You are doing theism wrong. Most probably. I mean, obviously this is targeted towards most people. You might be one of the few who are not doing it wrong. You're using your own head. You're not running the program, be it a religious program or be it just the usual, well, let's pray towards the vertically up vector from where you're currently standing on this marble, on this ball over there. This is not Earth, but okay, concept works. I mean, that's hilarious. The idea there is, I guess, to show some devotion, and it's about the emotion, and that works for you. Okay, fine. But does not your relationship with God, if you want to have one, deserve something higher than that? Something less mindless? And relationship? What are we talking about? You cannot have a relationship with God. He never answers. He, she, it, whatever, never answers. You might say, well, yes, he does. Then you don't need me to tell you that you're doing theism wrong. You need a psychiatrist to tell you that you're doing being a human wrong, because he doesn't answer. Whatever you're perceiving there is a misinterpretation of reality. Even if God would be actually answering to you, even if he would, I would just say he, okay, this keeps it simple. Even if that were the case, you couldn't know if your interpretation of whatever you're perceiving there is the correct interpretation. Therefore, what you'd be doing there is you'd be risking your sanity. You would just say, well, this gust in the trees to top just when I was thinking about Jesus was him giving me a wink, telling me, yes, I'm here, thank you for thinking of me. The other people currently seeing this gust in the treetop, they are all just seeing a gust in the treetop. But you, for some reason, in your association system that I hereby just modulated subtly, and you picked up on that, congratulations, but you know that it is me, and thank you for thinking of me, and even risking developing schizophrenic tendencies for this communication with me. I love this. Do you think that is the truth, man? But okay, this, for other people who are possibly watching this, I mean, basically no one watches these videos of mine. I don't know why, because there's a ton of wisdom and experience in there. It is, sorry, I mean, I know it sounds wanky, but if this truth sounds wanky to you, then either it is wanky, either it is actually just not the truth, or it is inappropriate to say at the respective point in time, which might be the case here, but I think your judgment thereof is biased, or it is just, once again, the people don't want to be touched by the truth. And in this case, the truth is I have a lot of stuff to convey there. And if I say that rubs you the wrong way, doesn't it? We're living in a world where the truth shall not be spoken, for it will feel wrong. In many cases, if you experience a truth moment of another person, you might interpret the person to be negative or wrong or whatever. Look at that person, what that person did over there. Hating is so easy and so much fun, isn't it? Why is that even so? It's terrible. Okay, back on topic. So for others who are watching this, I don't want to talk particularly about people who kneel and pray. No, that was just one example of many. You are doing theism wrong. What is theism even? Theism is one's mental exploration of the concept or actuality of one or multiple gods. And I will focus on monotheism because it's the only one that makes sense. I mean, saying, well, there's the lightning god and then there's the sun god. I mean, maybe that is even true. Of course not. But see, this I'm not talking about Christianity here. I'm not talking about Islam here. I'm not talking about all the tired old arguments for or against God here, like, well, someone had to create, look at all of this, is beautiful, therefore it must have been made by a god. No, it's not we, the water that fits exactly in the puddle cavity that we were born into evolved slowly. No, it must be God. Yeah, therefore you can see the trees tell you there's a god. I should say at this point that I am a theist myself. I'm just saying I'm shitting on all those arguments because they are shit. So what you're going to hear here, if you keep listening, is, well, reasons for, not for God, but why you are doing theism wrong. What is that? What are you doing wrong about, and how should you do it instead? why is theism even a thing? Well, but let's assume for a second that there is a God, that someone who caused all this. Then it would be interesting to know, would possibly even be important to know. But maybe it can even be known or learned if you're willing to explore it, because I mean, if you're observing something like gravity, Newton with the apple that fell on his head, supposedly, yeah, it's probably just a meme. That is an observable phenomenon that prompted a person to think. Maybe we do not have such phenomena. Maybe we do, and I hold that we do, but it's more like the orchestra of the entire thing that would prompt one to possibly think of a god, not just one individual thing, like, well, the gust in the treetop, or I just had an orgasm and said, oh God, while I was approaching it, and also during the experience thereof. That is not quite a clear indicator, is it? But the the orchestration of the entire, all the things together might whisper, there is a God. It may or may not, but I'm not going there. This is not what this is about. I'm telling you, I'm trying to convey that and why and how you're doing theism wrong, and I would want to motivate you to, if you want to go there, do it right instead. So what's certainly wrong is to say that you already have the highest truth. You already know that. You already know the highest truth of all. You know God. You know His name is Jesus, and He glues on ears when He's not busy being crucified. I mean, this entire idea of well, there must be a reason for all of this. This is the cosmological argument or something. I don't really care about those, because I just go by logic. I rethink from scratch. I always rethink from scratch, apart from the solution that I found myself, instead of going by, well, this is the thing that the wise person this and this said, and the label for that thing is this and this. How is that productive? How is that not like an appeal to authority, and also then tapping into a high energy that already exists of the people discussing that, and of that meme itself, of whatever the person said or didn't say. Like this idea, if you're doing the same thing again and again and you expect a different outcome, that's the definition of insanity. I don't know who said that originally, but it was probably popularized by one of the Far Cry titles 3 or 4, where there was in the intro sequence, I think. That itself, it's just a meme, and it's not true, because you cannot even do the same thing. The best you can do is do the same thing in a computer, because in a computer you can simulate that a thing is the same thing. But in reality, nothing is ever the same. There's slight shift of factors. You are changing. Reality is changing. The wind is changing. The molecules you're doing it with are now slightly. Everything is changing. So doing the same thing, well, if you do that over and over again, expecting a change, well, if you keep doing that, you will experience a change. And if there's only your skin getting slightly shrunky, shrimply, because you're getting old while doing so. See, that's the problem with memes. With mimetic thinking, with the people said that, and I want to tap into that energy when I'm talking to others on the internet, and so forth and so on. It's best if, and I've done that a lot, sticking with yourself and thinking on your own instead of always seeking the approval of the group, because what new thoughts can you find when the approval is implicitly resting on old thoughts? Huh? There's also this meme, I think, therefore I am, which makes sense, and of course I get the sentiment, but it's not the optimal way to put it. I would put it this way, I perceive, therefore I am. Now, before you object, well, you need eyes for that and ears. God damn it, this is willful objection. This is you having the goal to object, stimulated by the mimetic energy of the original saying that you want to stick with. And who is this faggot telling you this stuff? Me, who is not one, but anyway, who's this idiot just telling you these things? Who is that guy even? I mean, he's now saying this fundamental thing that everybody agrees to is wrong. Therefore, he is wrong. Let's see how he is wrong. Well, very simple. He said perceiving, and a perception that requires ears and eyes. That's, I mean, if you're thinking like that, then you are falling for the energy. You're not trying to see the truth. You're not trying to find the truth. You're trying to find a certain answer. And if you're trying to find a certain answer, I mean, a certain already defined answer, instead of looking for a new one, or looking for whatever the answer is and then finding the same one. That's fine too. No one says that the answers need to be new. But what I say is that whatever you give an answer, your path there should either be the memory of something that you know is correct, like the time of the clock or whatever, or it must be a new search that you create in that very moment. A leap from A to B to C, you make the new conclusion based upon the fresh data, and then you tell. Else, that's just stupid. It's even implicitly a lie, because if you're telling someone, this and this is true, when your knowledge, when the certainty with which you're making that statement, the certainty that you're conveying is not the actual certainty of the substance, is not actually the certainty that you have, then you're lying. That parameter of your statement is a lie. So I hope you have seen now that this video gives you some fresh insights, except for those who have seen basically these videos of myself, or many of them, because this stuff isn't exactly new. I'm just compiling it differently. But I feel to be thinking it up, or refining it, or tapping into memories, just like I said. But remembering stuff that I'm convinced is true, and sometimes I might actually tell you things that I'm convinced is true from my memory, and then in that moment I would realize, hey wait, I'm not sure, and then I would start thinking about it out loud, which might get me into rumble mode a bit. Anyway, so mimetic energy, I think therefore I am. Perception, why? Because when you say, I think therefore I am, this statement implies that you have perceived, that you are in the process of thinking, or that you can make the decision to think or not think, or that you're thinking at some moment, and at some moment you may not be thinking. Or maybe the word thinking is just not correctly used here, no? Maybe what's actually happening is not thought, but is well, indeed perception, and maybe they mean this mental activity that's happening there in your head, which is currently not a thought process, but you're just realizing, well, I'm currently not thinking, I'm seeing that I'm not thinking, I'm not in the process of digesting information or pushing into a certain direction with my thought process of a question machine, so I'm not thinking. Maybe they're calling this perception process itself already thinking. That's fine then. But then we have another problem. Then we have the problem of communication and the meaning of words. What will the people who hear that saying that is mimetically being repeated, what will they digest? What is it that they hear? What is it that they think? Doesn't that matter? And because I do care about that kind of stuff, I would rephrase that to say, I perceive, therefore I am. Okay, back on topic. So that was to show you that it's bad to just run with all these things that supposedly have already been found. I mean, what has been found about God? I mean, apart from the fact that nobody knows whether he even fucking exists. Nothing. Well, he seems to be pretty well hidden, so there's that. And then we go with, well, he is of course omnipotent, because my God got a very big dick, because I want to be justified to believe that. Dude, omnipotence is a very useless word, because it implies, it has two potential meanings. One, God can do anything ever, like anything. If you think it doesn't make sense, if you think it's illogical, it's just because you're human. You're imprisoned, you're basically in this logic space, or in your little human brain. Maybe the universe itself even, on some level, is just not logical, and you just think it has to be, because you have this human brain, which is limited implicitly. And so God is also not bound to logic. No, maybe that's the case. Though I hold that he is. I hold that God exists, and that he is bound to logic. And I'm saying again, he, because I'm using human words. It's just, you know... See, that's one of the things. Okay, two topics now. One, human language is limited. It is... I don't know how to phrase it. It may lead your mind into directions that you didn't want to take, but you had to put it into words somehow, and this then implied some things that you didn't want to imply, but now they have been said, and you yourself also heard them and have to factor them into the next sentences that you speak, and now therefore your entire thought process is biased and changed. It's a possibility, isn't it? By the way, for those who know this game, I know I'm doing it wrong, but I can't really concentrate on this now. This is just a backdrop for the video, for the podcast. And the other thing that just came in there as a topic is that people say that you need words to think. But that's ridiculously stupid and wrong, of course. You don't need words to think. How do you think words ever emerged? Because somehow the people had words on which they built then the other words, like puzzle? No, that doesn't make sense. The words are a representation of meaning. And therefore meaning itself already existed in the minds who came up with the words. And thinking is the processing of meanings. Of course, that's often tied to words, and words can help with that. They can make that more macroscopic, more bigger, more can give it bigger balls, make it more weighty, can give it more mass. So therefore that can be helpful if you have cleaned up your word processor over years. But they can also get in the way quite a lot. So sometimes it really makes sense to try just to quietly follow the flow of perception in your head instead of using words in particular. So omnipotence. One perspective would be to just say, well, God can do anything ever, anything, even if it seems completely illogical. He can, for example, just exist and also not exist. You think it doesn't make sense? Ha! That's because you're limited. And I hold that this is bullshit. I am convinced that if God exists, and well, beside the point, I am convinced he exists, is that if he does so, then this implies that the meanings that we can process ultimately are true meanings. That we are not just some kind of mud golem that somehow came into being and is just a little stick figure that God can play with, or after our life we will be elevated to the next plane where we will then, with the souls that we have grown here on these flesh bodies, will be able to utilize the next level of infrastructure, which will bring us one step closer to God, who will always be infinitely far away, just like the speed of light is in the universe. I mean, it's 300,000 kilometers away from you, no matter how fast you go. So there's that. Yeah, I have to do something against my descent here, 133 kilometers, but I'm slowing down, so things are looking good. But my fuel... So that's one take, and I'm convinced that's complete bullshit. I see, for example, you might say, God created the universe. And then I tell you, okay, so he had to do that because else it would not exist. Right? And isn't that logical? Isn't that God being bound by logic? Isn't that God has to do the thing so that the thing then has happened? That's what that is. And what does that mean? That God is slave to logic like everything. Or maybe we shouldn't phrase it like this. I mean, what is logic even? That's what we have to ask, and then at this point, what is logic? Is it 1 and 1 is 2 and all of that stuff? And this, therefore that? I would say that God is the truth. And when we are thinking, logic is the processing of meaning, is using fragments of the truth, sticking them together, playing puzzle with that, trying to find our pathway through this infinite thing that is the truth. Navigating in this ocean of meaning. That's what thinking is, that's what logic is. And therefore it would be using the things that really are, or it would at least try to. And in this way, we could say that God is bound by logic. Only the examples that I gave there seem so very fundamental. They get the point across, well, but they also seem laughable. Of course he would have to do the thing so that the thing that has happened. It's just him being alive, living his will, doing the thing, being God, you know? Why would I even say it? Just to make, well, I would say that just to make the point that God is, in quotation marks, bound by logic like everybody else. I know it's not the best way to put it, but it gets the point across. So this one meaning of omnipotence is out the window, I would say. That he can do anything ever. Can he exist and simultaneously not exist? No. Can he give you free will, but at the same time completely define what you will do? No. I mean, I have to contradict both theists and atheists here, both primarily atheists, because, well, could God give you some kind of destination but still give you free will? Yes, of course. Because when you, for example, choose to go to a place with your car, for example, and then you are on the way there, and but which lane will you choose? Which road will you choose to get there? All of that is dynamic, alive, free. Will you stop? Will you rest stop? Will you have to refill your vehicle? Will you eat something? Will you take a shit? What is it that you will do? All of that is open. But, I mean, we could say that, for example, death seems pretty inevitable. In my opinion, actually, it isn't. Because I believe that there's no afterlife, even though I'm a theist. I believe that this here, the universe, this is heaven. It's in the making. And guess what? The ones making it, that's us. We are God in the coexistence configuration. And I have lots of thoughts on that and lots of technical details which make that much less floaty and extreme and wild that it may sound now in your head as I've uttered than it actually is. But I don't want to go there. That's not what this talk is about. This talk is about you doing theism wrong. So that was the idea of omnipotence in the logic. Why logic? He's God. But then we have the other meaning. The other meaning is God can do anything that logically makes sense. That's anything that can possibly have meaning. I mean, things that cannot even have meaning, like he exists and simultaneously, whatever simultaneously means in this particular context, it's interesting, right? It immediately asks the question of the nature of time, even though the statement was just well, he exists and he also doesn't exist. We have to somehow make a reference to time there and call that into question. Anyway, that is just not meaningful. He exists, but he also doesn't. That doesn't have meaning. And so this other meaning of omnipotence could be, well, it can do everything that can have meaning, anything that can actually be defined. Yes, fine, okay. But why then use that word omnipotence, which is obviously so very loaded? Which required me to make these many words, or maybe 30% of those would have been sufficient. But people toss that around primarily because of their willful and emotional energy. They want to perpetuate the meme of their religion and the meme of the theism, and maybe it's a good thing that we have theism in this world, though the world should be rather a clean room in this regard, instead of this tainted place where everybody's thinking, well, Jesus or Yahweh or Allah or whatever the fuck the term should be, or whatever the perspective would be. We should rather have a clean room thinking about God, if ever we would do that. And that's one of the main purposes of this talk, to try to give you the ability or the tendency or momentum or will or whatever to try to pretend as if this is a clean room and you have actually a mind that is not yet burdened with all that baggage that we have when it comes to that topic. Yeah. So this other meaning of omnipotence also doesn't make sense. So I would say we shouldn't use that word at all. We shouldn't use it. It's not productive. It's getting in the way. So what else can we then say about God? If we just assume for a second that he exists, what else can we say then? That's the thing, that's exactly the thing. Now you're on the path. Or I'm just pretending that you are, because I'm just pretending that you're following my thoughts. That's the path, you know? Ask the question instead of saying, well, I know. I mean, people might have some faith in God, as in you have no reason to believe that he exists, but somehow maybe you sense that there is some theistic truth to the world, and you don't want to lose that thing that you somehow maybe it's even a perception, maybe you actually sensed that. And because you don't know, because you know you cannot really name what it is that you sensed there, you cannot even say that you actually felt something with certainty, because that's such a fragile little flower, you don't want to, you don't want to risk trampling it, and so you don't And also maybe just fear. What if you have a bad thought about God in your head? For example, what if God just masturbates the whole time? What if the entire OT of existence is him jerking off the whole time? And this is basically the way he does it. Or whatever. I mean, just, some thought that you might think, oh no, I must not think this. Dude, do you not think that God wants your mind to be free, for he built all this motherfucking shit so that you have one? And then he wants you to just bow and crawl on the floor or whatever. No, he wants you to, or he would want you to live with that infinite, wonderful, holy thing that he is, the truth, in the best way possible. And what way is that? That is your way, because life is alive, it's new, it's even new for God himself. It's always alive. Do you think he has experienced everything that can be experienced already? Do you think he cannot make new experiences? Do you think that he's poorer than us because we can make new experiences? Do you think that God cannot? Do you think that God is inferior to us? Or would be, I mean, So, certainly, I mean, if you think I have the holy truth from my parents, who I was born to, because I was born in the Middle East, or the Bible Belt or whatever, at that particular time in history, when this particular mimetic construct of religion, which was called Christianity or Islam, was a thing, and my parents insisted on teaching me that, therefore I know the holy truth and it glues on ears. And it can be concluded directly from the idea that something must have created this, which is really just an idea and really not a good argument. I mean, there's so many holes there, and also this leap from, well, therefore must be a creator, and therefore his name must be Jesus, and he was a carpenter, and the Bible is true. There's no logical connection between A and B, motherfucker. So if that's the way you do theism, you do theism wrong. And see, let's say Jesus is the real dude. Let's just say that for a moment. Do you not think that he would appreciate you believing in him for good reasons instead of bad ones? That's the path that Matt Dillahunty took. You know, that pretty famous, currently a bit fucked in the head, in my opinion, atheist, who I appreciate a lot, or appreciated. I hope he can get back on the boat. Of proper thinking instead of being such a screaming old man, you know. Well, an argument can easily be made that he is seeking out that moment in the discussion where he can once again explode and make sounds as if he currently has food in his mouth. See, like I said, I appreciate him, but like I also appreciate some other figures that I don't want to mention right now because I don't want to destroy this video entirely and outright. What am I saying? Outright? I have like 5 minutes left and I have to go. Ill-timed, huh? Those people I also criticize if there's something worth criticizing about. And in this way you should also think about God. Not criticizing as in, why is there poor people? Why is there suffering? Well, obviously there's suffering because God is bound to logic, and creating all of this is... I mean, basically every person is omnipotent, just like God is. I mean, you are bound by the rules of existence. Can you fly? No, you don't have wings. Well, therefore you can't fly. Can God exist and therefore and also at the same time not exist? No, because it doesn't have meaning. But can you fly? No, that doesn't have meaning, because within the context of the universe, blah 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 blah. See, omnipotence is a shitty word, it's useless. God is doing all he can within the confines of the truth. And we are doing, hopefully, all we can within the confines that we found ourselves in. But that's the big difference between us and God, right? God is certainly running at 100% steam at all times. Because why the fuck wouldn't he? He is God. He is existence. Why wouldn't he live it to the fullest, man? And some of us know what I'm talking about when they're talking about them, or when they're thinking about their own existence. Why would I not live my life to the fullest, the maximum that I can? You might say, well, that sounds a bit strenuous. Well, if I would have to do this now, I have to make more of my day instead of playing this game, for example. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. If you feel that this is strenuous, then maybe it's best for you to actually stay sitting on the couch and playing the game like I'm doing right now, or recording some video or whatever. But maybe there's a subtle voice within you, and I'm not saying actual voice, but it's some part of you that you haven't yet embraced as actually a part of yourself that is telling you maybe you want to do more than you're already doing. But that voice is then submerged, is squished by, well, by all the other emotional energy tendencies of, I want to keep sitting here and the burgers are fine. I don't know, I'm smoking some hemp, and so I want to just keep doing the same thing the whole time because I still am entertained, and so forth and so on. So I'm saying balance that. See if there's some subtle thing within you that says something else. Try to look at that thing with a microscope of your brain, pull it to the front, and factor it in with the rest. And once you have done all of that, then you might actually be living life to the fullest, even if you're just sitting on the couch eating some chips or whatever. Though I would vote against that. Anyway, back on topic, you're doing theism wrong. So what can we know about God? Omnipotence, does that make sense? Well, I already said that he would be bound by the laws of logic, of meaningfulness. But this means that we can meaningfully think about God. Because we would have to ask ourselves, what would then be the nature of God? And then again, someone would say, no, don't think about that, I must not violate. In most cases, when people think they don't want to sin when they think about God, or calling into question and so forth, the truth is they're just protecting that little distortion in their head that they created when they were programmed into their mimetic system by their parents in the society and raped into obedience by thousands of years storm-tested arguments that their parents remembered and then programmed into the brains of their kids, and then using survival instinct mechanisms like, well, you will not get the good food if you don't obey, or we will shun you if you don't join in with the rest of society and pray 5 times a day on your knees in this particular cardinal direction, or entering the toilet room in this particular way and wiping your ass in this particular way, which at least some of those people do, and I've called that into question for reasons that are obvious once you have read about it. So that's not a good way. I mean, would you not think, if you believe in God, that the best way to do him justice, to do the fact that you believe in the holy highest truth, justice, is to have thought about it, have refined it, have called it into question, have added to that mosaic, have even asked yourself, maybe what if that whole thing is not true? You know, true faith would be to think freely. Because as long as you're not thinking freely, as long as you think, well, I have to protect my faith in Jesus, yeah. As long as you do that, you don't really have faith. Because you still have fear. And true faith is to be without fear. That's true faith. As long as you're fearing, in a way, the only thing that you really have to fear is fear itself. Because if faith is what you need, and I'm not saying you need it, I'm speaking within this context of some people's views on the matter. If faith is what you need, then as long as you have fear, fear is what you are fearing. Because you should try to get away from that, because that isn't true faith, man. True faith is if you don't have fear. As long as fear exists within your mind, you are not having faith, and therefore you will go to hell. I'm just kidding, but you know. See the problem? So you should do God justice, if you wish to do so, by thinking freely about the topic, and also by thinking about God's potential nature. What would that be then, God's potential nature? Well, what would God be like? From his perspective, nothing exists, except himself, unless he has already created the universe. Before that, if that even makes sense, I mean, I don't want to talk about the nature of time and everything, because in 1 minute I actually have to leave the house, so that's maybe I should turn off this nice infrared radiator that I bought from Amazon for $80 a few days ago, which I love. It's really great, better than my space heaters. So you would have to think about the nature of God. What does he perceive? Only himself. What is it that he perceives then? Is it green, yellow? Is it made of cheese? Does it have holes? Is it 5-dimensional? What is it? It is anything that he wants it to be. Anything, else he would be constrained. So he is constrained in being able and having to choose whatever he wants to be. Yeah, he's kind of constrained in that total freedom, yes. And that's why this universe is what we, you and I, God, created to be God's rest, because now we're no longer constrained by this total freedom. Now we have an endless meaning that will ever evolve and will create ever increasing bliss for us. But back to the topic of what would God's nature before the universe be like? He would see, I exist, I am. And then he chooses what that means, and then he experiences that meaning, that dream of the truth, because it's not the actual truth. The actual truth is, I exist. And maybe you want to put a bit more thought into that if you dare call yourself a theist.